My wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it turned into a crime scene. I was the victim, my mother was the mastermind, and my fiancé, he was a paid actor. The air in the bridal suite was thick with lilies and hairspray, and it felt like I was suffocating. Every dream I built, every promise he whispered in the dark, our future, it was all a big lie. The two people I trusted most in the world, my anchors, had used that trust as a weapon to bleed me dry. And not just financially. My heart didn't break, it exploded, leaving a hollow crater where my future used to be. Have you ever felt betrayed so deeply that all you want is cold revenge? Most people would have dissolved into a puddle of tears, a crumpled mess of tulle and broken dreams. And I was for a minute. But then, through the shock, something else bubbled to the surface. A cold, hard clarity. An anger so pure it burned the pain right away. I decided right then and there they weren't getting my tears. They weren't getting my despair. I didn't just get even, I took everything. And I'm going to tell you exactly how. Before I share how I hit rock bottom and climbed back up, subscribe and ring that bell. You don't want to miss a single second of this. If you've ever faced betrayal that left you breathless, share your story in the comments. It helps to know you're not alone. To understand the scale of the deception, you have to see the perfect picture they painted. I'm Lauren, I'm 28, and up until that day, I had a strong conviction that I lived a charmed life. I was living in Seattle, working a graphic design job I loved. My dad passed away from a sudden heart attack when I was in college, and it just destroyed us. After that, it was just my mom and me. We became very close, or so I believed. She was my go-to person for everything. Looking back now, I can see her support was never about my happiness. It was about keeping control, keeping me tied to her. Then I met David. He was straight out of a romance novel, charming, attentive, ambitious. A financial advisor who seemed to have his whole life figured out. He listened to me, remembered the little things, and made me feel seen in a way I hadn't since my dad died. He and my mom hit it off immediately, which I thought was a huge blessing. They'd talk for hours about market trends and investments. I found it boring, but I was just happy they were bonding. He used to say things like, "Your mom is so smart with money, Lauren. You're lucky she's looking out for your inheritance." I would smile, completely unaware. My dad set up a trust fund for me. I can't access it until I turn 30 or get married. It was just a detail I shared with David early on. I thought it was incidental. It turned out to be the cornerstone of their whole conspiracy. The red flags were there. They always are, right? Just so easy to ignore when you think you're in love. Like the time David seemed a little too interested in the specific terms of my dad's trust. He'd pass it off as professional curiosity. "I just want to make sure you're protected, honey, that your mom has everything set up to benefit you." It sounded so caring. Then there were my mom's comments, little digs at me. "Oh, Lauren, you're so creative, but numbers just aren't your thing. It's a good thing you have David and me to handle the serious stuff." She'd say it with a smile, like a gentle tease, but it was a seed of self-doubt. She was chipping away at my confidence, making me feel like I couldn't manage my own life, let alone my own money. The wedding planning was a whirlwind, all orchestrated by my mom and David. They handled the big contracts, the venue, the catering, insisting I focus on the fun stuff. I glided right through it, not knowing my dream wedding was just a business deal. They weren't planning a wedding, they were planning an acquisition. The day arrived, a crisp and beautiful morning in Seattle. I was in the bridal suite with my friends, laughing and sipping champagne. Everything felt perfect. Too perfect. About an hour before the ceremony, my mom came in alone. She sent my friends away, her face a mask of grave concern. "Lauren, darling, we need to talk," she said, her voice low. My stomach dropped. She sat next to me, her hands like ice. "I have to do this. I can't let you make the biggest mistake of your life." My heart started hammering against my ribs. "Mom, what are you talking about?" She took a deep breath. "It's David," she whispered. "He's not who you think he is. He's after your money, Lauren. He's only marrying you for the inheritance." The words felt like nonsense. David loved me, our life was real. "That's not true," I stammered. "You love David, you two are so close." "That was an act," she said, her eyes filling with what I now know were crocodile tears. "I was trying to get close to him, to find out his true intentions, to protect you." She reached into her handbag and pulled out a folded document. "He tried to get me to sign this. It's a prenup. He forged your signature on it." She unfolded the papers, and there it was. a legal document, and at the bottom, a sloppy, fake version of my name. It said that if we divorced, he'd get 50% of everything, including my inheritance. The room started spinning. Humiliation washed over me. My mother, my hero, had just saved me from a monster. That's what I thought for one stupid second. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing, thanking her. She just held me, stroking my hair. "I know, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I'll take care of everything. I'll go tell him it's over." She stood up, the very picture of a righteous mother, and walked out, leaving me to shatter. And I did. The white dress felt like a clown costume. The flowers seemed to mock me. Betrayal hollows you out. It makes you question everything, especially your judgment. How could I have been so blind? At that moment, I didn't just feel heartbroken, I felt annihilated. I was a ghost in a wedding dress, and my life was a crime scene. For the first 2 days, I was a wreck, exactly what they wanted. I hid out in a hotel with my phone off, just a miserable heap of misery and room service. My mom's story, her heroic rescue, played on a loop in my head, but even through the grief, something felt off. Her performance was a little too perfect. Why wait until an hour before the wedding? Why was the proof a prenup with such an obvious, clumsy forgery that would never hold up anyway? It was the memory of an old envelope that started the unraveling. A few months back, I searched for a stapler in my mom's office. I found a thick manila envelope in her desk drawer. It had David's name on it. When I asked, she just brushed it off. "Oh, just some investment ideas for his clients. Nothing important." I believed her then. Now it feels like everything. That little inconsistency was the first crack in her story. On day 3, running on fumes and a tiny spark of suspicion, I went to her house while she was out. My hands were shaking as I went into her office. I felt like I was trespassing, but a gut feeling told me the real violation had already happened. I went straight to her desk. The envelope was still there. My heart was pounding as I opened it. It wasn't an investment idea. It was David's bank records and photocopies of cashier's checks. Check after check from one of my mom's accounts deposited right into David's. The payments started right after we got engaged. They were regular, substantial. It was a payment schedule, a salary. My mother hadn't saved me from a con man. She had hired him. The forged prenup wasn't his tool to steal from me. It was her prop to save me and blow up my relationship. Her goal became clear: keep me single, keep me dependent, and most importantly, keep her hands on my trust fund. If I got married, she would lose control. So she staged this whole cruel play to isolate me and cement herself as the guardian of my life and my money. The first betrayal was painful. This was a bottomless pit. The woman who gave me life had made repeated attempts to ruin it for cash. For a long moment, I just stood there, papers shaking in my hand. But then something inside me snapped. The grief didn't go away, it just crystallized. It hardened into a diamond-sharp point of rage. The tears stopped. My breathing steadied. They thought my kindness was weakness. My trust was in stupidity. They thought I would break. They were wrong. The first call I made was to Sarah, my oldest friend and a brilliant lawyer. We met at a quiet coffee shop, and I laid the bank records on the table. I told her everything, my voice low and steady, trying to keep the rage from boiling over. She listened, her face getting grimmer by the second. When I finished, she looked at the papers and then at me. "Lauren," she said, her voice firm, "this isn't just a betrayal. This is a crime. This is civil conspiracy to commit fraud. The forgery, the payments, they built their cage. We have to lock it." That was the moment everything changed. Sarah's office became my war room. Grief became fuel. Pain became the focus. She was my general and I was her best soldier. We started building our case, brick by damning brick. First, the prenup. Sarah sent it to a forensic handwriting analyst. The result, a blatant amateur forgery, brick 1. Next, the money. Sarah subpoenaed their full bank records. The paper trail was even worse than what I'd found. We also found emails. Oh, God, the emails. Sarah's legal team unearthed a chain of communication between them that made me sick. They talked about me as if I were a stock that they could manage. They planned how to handle my emotional state to keep me compliant. David even had the nerve to complain about his fee, arguing that dealing with me was more work than he'd signed up for. Reading it felt like swallowing glass, but every word hardened my resolve. Brick 2. Sarah said our state allows one party to consent to record conversations. As long as I was part of the conversation, I could legally record it. So, I started playing the part they wanted, the broken-hearted daughter. I cried to my mom on the phone, letting her console me, all while my phone was recording. I'd ask the leading questions Sarah gave me. "I just don't understand how he was so convincing, Mom. How did you know?" She, full of pride, would walk me through her investigation, giving away clues with every word. I did the same thing with David. I called him, pretending I needed closure. He was more careful, but he slipped. He admitted he never would have done it if my mother hadn't made it worth his while. He said he was sorry, but it was just a business deal that went south. A business deal. That's all I was to him. Brick 3. Then we found something even darker. David had a pattern. A woman in Portland had a strikingly similar experience. She fell in love quickly, got engaged, then faced a sudden breakup. This left her heartbroken, and a family member stepped in to protect her trust. She had never been able to prove it, but the stories matched. She agreed to provide an affidavit. We also dug into my mother's past and found she had managed a huge inheritance away from her sister years ago. This wasn't a one-time thing. This is who they were. That was the final heavy brick. Over those few weeks, I changed. The innocent girl who walked toward that altar was gone. In her place stood a woman I hardly recognized, yet one I was beginning to respect. I focused, strategic. I listened to an old voicemail from my dad. "Never let anyone decide your worth, Lori." I was finally learning what he meant. I wasn't a pawn in their game anymore. I was the one controlling the board. The trap was set. Now I just had to spring it. The day of reckoning was set for 3 months after the canceled wedding. They thought I was still fragile, that I was starting to heal. They got complacent. That was a big mistake. Sarah, my lawyer, invited them to her office. It was for a mediation and asset resolution meeting. The bait was the future of my father's trust. For my mom, the chance to formalize her control was too good to pass up. For David, the letter hinted at a final payout to keep him quiet. They both agreed to come, not suspecting a thing. I remember walking into that conference room feeling strangely calm. Sarah sat at the head of a long, polished table. I sat to her right. The evidence was in thick binders, with one for each person. My mother and David walked in together, still a team. My mom gave me a look of pure pity. "Lauren, honey, I'm so glad you're finally ready to sort this out," she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Sarah started the meeting. "Thank you both for coming," she said, her voice perfectly neutral. "We're here to discuss Lauren's assets, but before we discuss the future, we need to address some past financial transactions." Her assistant placed a thick binder in front of my mom and another in front of David. "Open to tab A," Sarah said, her voice now cold. "You'll see copies of Mr. Allen's bank statements matched with yours, Mrs. Evans." I watched their faces. My mother's smile disappeared when she saw the spreadsheets. They showed money moving from her account to his. David went white. He started to stammer something, but Sarah cut him off. "Please, hold your questions. Tab B is the forensic analysis of the prenup. As you'll see, the signature is a forgery." My mother's face was a mess of confusion and horror. "I don't understand," she sputtered. "I was protecting her, he forged it." "Let's move to tab C," Sarah continued, ignoring her completely. "Here are the email transcripts between you two. They talk about planning the wedding, the breakup, and managing Lauren's finances." As their eyes scanned the pages, the color drained from their faces. The email where David called me an emotional workload was there. My mother also shared her plan to keep me close and manageable. It was all included. "And finally," Sarah said as she picked up a remote, "we have audio." The monitor on the wall lit up, displaying an audio waveform that moved in time with my mother's voice. I had to be clever, Lauren. He was so manipulative, but I was one step ahead. Her voice, her own words, filled the silent room, tying the noose. Then came David's. "Look, it was just business. Your mother made me an offer. I'm sorry you got hurt." When the recordings ended, you could have heard a pin drop. My mother just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. The loving mom mask was gone, and behind it was a monster. David just stared at the table, his whole world imploding. "So," Sarah said, her voice like steel, "let's talk about what happens now. What you have done is civil conspiracy, fraud, and forgery. This isn't a negotiation. It's a notification." She slid 2 more documents across the table. "This is a civil complaint, already filed with the court. We are suing you, David, for every cent, plus damages. And we are suing you, Mother, for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. We are petitioning the court to have you removed as executor of my father's trust immediately. We sent a full copy of our findings to the district attorney's office. This includes the affidavit from your other victim in Portland, David. I imagine they will be very interested in the criminal implications. That was the kill shot, the threat of criminal charges. My mother let out a choked sob. David looked like he was going to be sick. Their perfect crime was now their perfect, inescapable trap. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The legal battle was short. With that mountain of evidence, they had no choice but to settle. David had to return all the money, leaving him bankrupt and his career in ruins. My mother was stripped of her executorship and had to pay a massive sum in damages. But the real justice wasn't financial. It was social. I didn't keep it a secret. I told our family, our friends, everyone who looked up to my mother. I told them the whole story, with the receipts to back it up. Their reputations were destroyed. They became outcasts. They were left with nothing but their greed and each other. What they did was unforgivable, but taking my power back was the most liberating thing I've ever done. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories of justice. Also, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. In the end, I won. I have my life back. My finances, my future, it's all mine. But victory is a strange thing. It doesn't feel like a party. There's a quiet satisfaction in knowing justice was served, but there's an ache there too. I exposed my mother for who she was, but in doing so, I had to accept I never really had a mother. I lost the man I thought I loved, only to face the fact that he was never real. The family I mourned was a fantasy they built for their gain. The scars are real. Trust doesn't come easily for me now, but I'm not broken. I'm stronger and smarter than I ever knew I could be. I'm the architect of my own life now. I see people for who they are, not who I want them to be. I lost the family I thought I had, but in the process, I found the woman I was always meant to become.